Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight, calling the Monday, June 11th meeting to order at 7 p.m. Before we begin, we'd like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the shared traditional lands of the Coast Salish people, and Mayor Hamilton sends her regrets that she's not able to be with us today. So first item is approval of the agenda. We do have a small addition to the agenda regarding 5.1, letter from Atomic Productions. Also looking to add Eats and Beats to declare also a municipally significant event. So with that, could I get a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved. Sorry, where are we putting Eats and Beats?
5.1.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. So next is public participation. Please remember to state your name and address, please.
Good evening, Doug Willoughby. I live on Asmink. I just want to do a follow-up on the May 14th council meeting as to what is going on with the traffic calming down Millburn, Lagoon, and Ocean. What progress has been made. I talked to a number of people, plus my own views down there when I'm down there. I've not seen any kind of progress going on. Is there something that is forthcoming in the near future?
I can tell you that a draft survey has been completed, so that the resolution from council included sending a survey to residents in the neighborhood. So that survey is almost ready to go out to the neighborhood to confirm or to get endorsement for the plan from the neighbors before the work begins.
Any idea when this might come to fruition?
It will be within the next couple of weeks. The survey just needs to be finalized.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, I believe that, I think the cushions for Ocean Boulevard have already been ordered too. I don't know what the ETA for the delivery is, but I think they were ordered. Does that sound familiar?
Good evening. My name is Robbie Johal. I reside at 303 Kenning Court. I moved here in 2016 from the city of Vancouver to build homes down here to move with my child, my wife. And I built a couple brand new houses, well over $2 million each. And the first one I did, I guess when I was done, I didn't know you guys had a rule for artificial turf installation, which I did an immaculate job, built a brand new house with a swimming pool. And then I guess I got denied for the turf installation, so I'm here to see if you guys can consider changing that rule. As I believe last month it was changed to a fellow lady. She got approved. And I've been fighting this for like a year now to get this approved. But the house next door I built, I had the permit, right-of-way permit, that actually stated no turf allowed, and I followed the rules. But on the first one I got in 2016, it doesn't say nothing about it. I put it in, and now I'm stuck, so I got to rip it out. And trying to sell the house right now, and it's causing me problems. So I don't know. It gives you great curb appeal. It's beautiful. I got people driving down my house, knocking on the door, asking who did the job. You know, I don't want brown lawn. It's a brand new house. So if you guys could consider helping me out and changing it, and that'd be great. If there's any other questions, I like animals. You know, deers, all the stuff that's coming down there, and you know, there's property for them to hang out and play, but this stuff is pet friendly, and if you got to remove it, it's easy. Just roll it back, take the spikes out, and install it back in. Bang, 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 you're done. So I don't know what the problem is, but let's see what happens.
So is that a formal request that will come later on?
Madam Chair, I'd recommend that the speaker write a letter into council that we can put on the agenda for council to consider.
Sure. So when do you want me to do that letter? Just bring it in tomorrow, or come back for the next meeting? I got till June 13th. If not, they said they're coming to take it out. So I don't know.
I would try and get the letter in as soon as you can, and we'll get it on the next regular council agenda.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair. I'm Chris Wright. I live on Marianne Crescent, and I remembered that this time. My comments relate to this year's municipal annual report. Section 98.2 of BC's Community Charter lists 7 topics that an annual municipal report must include. Considering each of these topics, I would like to give this year's annual report well, let's call it a CRIS score out of a maximum of 7 points. First, as an aside, the year of the annual report is actually 2018, not 2017, as it is presented in the document. For the purposes of this section of the Act, there are 3 key years to pay attention to. There's the previous year, which is 2017, and it relates to financial reporting and past operational achievements. There's the current year, which is 2018, and the next year, which is 2019. So, requirement A. The report must include, quote, the audited annual financial statements for the previous year, end quote. The previous year is 2017. Ding, 1 point earned. Requirement B. Given that Colwood has a city hall, schools, churches, and a large public recreational facility, let's look through the plan and see where the, quote, amount of property taxes that would have been imposed on the property in the previous year if it were not exempt for that year, for each tax exemption provided by a council under Division 7 of Part 7 of the Charter. I can't find that anywhere. I saw in the audited financial report a note, specifically note 12 on page 57, that was related to taxes, but I don't see the information there. I don't see this topic covered in the statistics appendix to the report. I obviously am missing where this has been presented, so this evening when that topic comes up in the agenda, it'd be really nice if someone could point me to where I could find it in the document. Until then, I just can't award it a CRIS point. Requirement C, quote, a report respecting municipal services and operations for the previous year, end quote. That would be 2017 we're talking about. Ding, 2nd point awarded. Requirement D, quote, a progress report respecting the previous year in relating to the objectives and measures established for that year, end quote. And we're talking about 2017 here. I've read through each department section in the report, and whilst I see lists of accomplishments for 2017, I don't see any mention of how that progress was measured, so I can't give you a CRIS point for that. Requirement E. Now, I'm guessing that since I've seen every member of council showing up reasonably regularly, that none of you have been disqualified under section 111 of the Charter. But if I didn't attend council meetings, I might not know that. I might be relying on the municipal annual report to tell me that information. So I would like to suggest that the annual report include a single sentence that addresses the requirement to disclose, quote, any declarations of disqualification in the previous year, end quote. By stating simply in this case that there are none. And wouldn't that make this topic really clear? Clarity is the entire point of our annual report. The information I have leads me to believe that disqualification is clearly not an issue. However, it is a reporting requirement. The CRIS score is tough, as it should be, no point given. Legal requirement item number F. Now, this is an important one to me. Section 98.2F states, and I quote, a statement of municipal objectives and the measures that will be used to determine progress respecting these objectives for the current and the next year, end quote. The current year is 2018, the next year is 2019. I've looked through each department section in the report, and I don't see any measures stated. To me, an example of how this might be presented would be from page 18 in the report, where Public Works mentions, quote, installations of the first phase of streetlight replacements, end quote. Why not tell me how many streetlights phase 1 represents? Then the measure is simply how many light bulbs city staff have installed. The next year I can read in the annual report that the goal was to install, say, 1,200 light bulbs, and that 1,178 were installed, from which I can see what the performance of my city staff was. Note that this is a legal requirement. This is not something that is nice to do, nor am I being unrealistic in expecting to see this sort of information. Further, the section in the Act requires the city to disclose the objectives and measures for the next year. That would be 2019 in this case. I see nothing for 2019 anywhere in the municipal annual report. and I am very disappointed by that. No crisp points given for this requirement. If I could take away 2 points, I would. So there you have it. Colwood's 2018 annual municipal report fails with a crisp score of 2 out of 7. I would ask members of this council to send this annual report back to city staff to have them bring it up to at least the legally required minimum stated in the community charter. Until that happens, my viewpoint is that the annual report does not meet the requirements of Section 98.2 and hence is not approvable by this council. Finally, I would be happy to meet with city staff to further explain my concerns if that is of value to the city. Thank you.
Was there anyone else for public participation? Asking a second time. Okay, seeing none, we will move on. Next is the mayor's message. I have nothing to share. Anyone on council? No? Okay, we'll move on. So that brings us to the adoption of the minutes. We have one set of minutes to adopt. A regular meeting of council from May 28th, 2018.
Move adoption, your acting worship. Acting worship. Worship, your worship.
Okay, we got a seconder, Councillor Nault. All those in favor? Opposed? None. It's carried. Okay, next section, correspondence requiring council direction. So we have 5.1 letter from Atomic Productions with the amendment.
I only know a little bit about this. I received a letter that Atomic Productions, for their liquor license requirements, requires that that council provide a resolution saying that this is a municipally significant event. And then today I also received word that the same is required for Eats and Beats for the liquor license for that event.
Councillor Martin?
Thank you. Sorry, I picked up my agenda last week. I don't know what the amendment was or what the addition was. What is there something that I'm missing?
So Atomic Productions had originally asked in their letter for this resolution for Rock the Shores. The amendment is to also include the ask for Eats and Beats.
Okay, got it. Thank you. So Councillor Nault just asked me a couple questions before the council meeting started, and I just thought I might as well just share it with everybody. One of his questions to me was how significant is Rock the Shores to our community, especially from a financial standpoint. One of the things that I did share with him is that Rock the Shores represents, from a budgetary standpoint, we earn more money on these 3 days than we do in the entire Grizzlies season. So it's significant from a dollar amount. Don't quote me on the percentage, but I also do know that it's my understanding that Rock the Shores works under West Shore Park and Rec's liquor license, and with that designation, we get a percentage. I believe it's 10% off gross that we earn off of that, and we don't do anything other than to supervise to make sure that the liquor license requirements are being met on that evening. So it's beneficial to us. I would also say that I think it's going to be beneficial for Eats and Beats, so I'm actually supportive of both motions. Or one motion combined. Is it one or two motions? Not seeing it. It'll just be one.
Yeah, we have a proposed motion from staff that says that council declare both Rock the Shores and Eats and Beats events of municipal significance. Councillor Day?
So in the report from Atomic for their draft security plan, it identifies that their liquor license is an extension of the West Shore Parks and Recreation's liquor license. And I'm just wondering if this changes that. If they're applying for a standalone liquor license, that then I'm concerned that we may not be getting the same revenue from Rock the Shores that we would have done if we did not approve a resolution.
I am not going to speak for West Shore Park and Rec, and because I don't sit on any committees on West Shore Park and Rec anymore other than the general board. I can't speak to your specific concern, Councillor Day. However, it has not been communicated that there's been any significant changes. my understanding is West Shore Park and Rec has always been very conscientious about, especially from a security standpoint. And from a financial standpoint, I cannot see why we would take less revenue than what we have in the past. So I would not anticipate that that's any different, but I would have to follow up and find out.
So just to follow up then on that, just looking for a page number, I think it's page 4 of the Rock the Shores 2018 security plan. It shows their license summary, and it gives the park's license extension. So it does. I am concerned that the only input we are seeing here is a request from the promoter of the event to change how their license would be, and that means that their plan would be different than they presented.
Thank you. My understanding of the word, the specific word we want to focus on is extension, and that is because the license right now is tied to the Q Center building itself. So to have liquor outside of the Q Center, you would need to be an extension of that license because you can't normally take alcohol out of that building or serve it. So what's happening is we are Rock the Shores, my understanding is Rock the Shores and the Atomic Production is piggybacking on West Shore Parks and Rec's liquor license. However, that liquor license has to be extended to outside of that building, is my understanding.
If I may just draw your attention to the letter from Atomic. It says the main stage open license area with a 5,000 patron capacity. This special event permit will be held by our company with a request to the City of Colwood to approve the event and deem it as municipally significant for the following reasons. The event is marketed, local artists, etc., etc. Under the terms of the permit, all liquor service and compliance will be Atomic Productions' responsibility, thus reducing liability to West Shore Parks and Rec. And through the security plan, though the security plan indicates that the licensed area is all ages per previous year, that approval has not been granted by Liquor Control and Licensing as of yet. So, to me, it's stating very clearly in this letter that they are getting their own liquor license, and it will no longer be an extension of West Shore Parks and Rec's liquor license. So, without hearing how West Shore Parks and Rec is going to be compensated, I can't support doing that for Rock the Shores because I feel that it's reducing the benefit to the community.
Councillor Logan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to clarify, there's a difference between a liquor license and an event permit, I believe. And I think what is being asked for or stated in the letter is specifically to do with an event permit that would outline the terms of service, where and when alcohol would be served, kind of putting some parameters on things, but the actual liquor license is something totally different that would be held by West Shore Parks and Rec. And I understand that previously West Shore Parks and Rec was kind of responsible for arranging the special event permit, thus holding the liability. This year, by the sounds of it, if I read this correctly, Atomic Productions is taking on the application of the events permit, thus the liability. However, the license still belongs to West Shore Parks and Rec, because I know liquor licenses are not easy to come by, but permits are different.
I'll make, excuse me, I'll move the staff recommendation.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Can you tell me where the recommendation is?
I don't have it, so I
No,
just assumed.
I can.
Oh, My apologies. I don't have the edited copy with the. I just assumed there was a recommendation. So I will move the recommendation, which is.
Could staff read it out again?
The staff recommendation that council declare both Rock the Shores and Eats and Beats events of municipal significance.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that?
I still have a problem with that, given the uncertainty that has been raised around the liquor license. It would have been nice if a representative of West Shore showed up, or the person applying for the license. So I would like to move that this be tabled to the next council meeting, when these questions can be answered. They are critical to my support of declaring this the kind of event where they're going to have a 5,000-seat liquor license. So I would move.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? The motion is defeated. Okay, so on to the original motion. We have a mover and a seconder. So all those in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. Okay, so that leads us to 5.2, letter from...
Madam Chair, just if I may, could we get clarification to council from staff then on the liquor licensing and the revenue to West Shore Parks and Rec?
Okay. Do a follow-up to West Shore Parks and Rec?
Thank you.
So 5.2, letter from Vancouver Island Sustainable Technology Association.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tonight we have a request for support from VISTA, and we also have the representative, Mr. Tom McDowell, to speak to the request, and if it's Madam Chair's desire, he's available to introduce the letter.
Yeah, please, if you had some presentation.
Madam Chair, Council, thanks very much for allowing me to attend this evening's meeting. I can read out the letter unless you've already read it. What would you like me to do?
But if you had anything to add?
Not really at this stage. The VISTA Expo 2018 is taking place next week in Nanaimo, and we are arranging to have VISTA Expo 2019 host location announced or acknowledged next week. So we're taking stock of who in the greater Victoria space, because that's where the Expo is rotating down to, would be keen to come on as a host location.
Okay, great. Did council have questions? Councillor Dave?
What do you expect from your host community?
As a minimum, we've had the mayor of the host location attend the start of the Expo and do a welcome address, outline the benefits of the city, outline some of the advances that have just been taking place in that calendar year, provide some form of advertising or outreach to nudge those green tech, sustainable technology, clean tech focals in their community to support the event either by attending or sharing the Expo on their network. To cash donation, to exhibit booth underneath a cash donation, to volunteers, to even multimedia support and television and or radio. It's a way of bringing the island onto the discussion table in the lower mainland, if not the Pacific Northwest a bit more, helping to accelerate the commercialization of sustainable technology.
And where in Colwood would you consider having your expo?
personally, I've already stopped by your Wandafuka Rec Center, but I'm open to consider others. I don't know if Royal Rose's Sustainable Environmental Campus will be finished by next year. I doubt it very much. Or I think their learning center is a bit small, but I'm open to consider other venues. Royal Roads University definitely has a series of, I call them mizzen huts, I don't know what the proper word is, but lower level hut meeting rooms. So that's a potential, but I think the Wandafuka Rec Center would be ideal because of the traffic, the marketing punch. And as a backup suggestion, the West Shore Chamber has often supported the concept of this returning to this area. So I am doing my utmost to do that justice, but at the same time, I'm trying to honor the fact that when we did the concept in our minds, we had it rotating around the Greater Victoria space, not being as close to where it was held or hosted last time, which was at Bear Mountain Resort, and Mayor Stu Young attended that event. So I'm sort of agreeable to slowly moving through the Greater Victoria space. So in 3 years' time when it comes back, making sure it sort of stops into Saanich, for example, or Sydney. But I thought because I live quite close, I thought I'd give a solid attempt to present the concept to the council.
Anyone else on council? Questions? Oh, yeah, Director of Planning.
Madam Chair, if I could just supplement Mr. McDowell's introduction. I spoke with Tom at length last week, and as a first step for Council's consideration would simply be, I think, a letter of support for holding the event in Colwood. We discussed the sponsorship opportunities for the event, and Council could consider that as part of the 2018 grant process. So if, for a first step, you'd like to support the event in Colwood, directing staff to prepare a report to that effect would be one option.
Madam Chair, I think it's a no-brainer. So from my perspective, I would move the recommendation that the Director of Planning just outlined.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that is carried. Thank you. Okay, on to new business, 6.1, Planning and Land Use. We have a report from the Director of Planning regarding 643 Latoria Road, Olympic View, Phase 1.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of Council that have been on Council for several years will probably remember this application. It was before Council back in 2012. It's a request to amend a covenant at Olympic View, and I've got an introduction here prepared by the planner who prepared the report. The applicant for 643 Latoria Road, which relates to Phase 1 of the Olympic View development, is requesting a modification to the existing development agreement. The Olympic View team has been working towards a site design for Phase 1 that better aligns with the development permit guidelines for steep slopes, environmentally sensitive areas, and hillsides in the OCP. In doing so, the existing tree buffer areas in the riparian setback described in the current development agreement entered into in 2002 are proposed to be modified. And I should note that Council did resolve to modify the covenant as requested in 2012, but the changes were not acted on by the applicant at that time. The applicant is now requesting that Council consider amending the existing 20-meter buffer areas that generally follow the property boundaries on the northern boundary of the site. These new buffers are identified in Schedules 2 and 3 attached to the staff report before you. The new buffers range from 4.5 meters to 15 meters, but actually encompass a slightly larger area than Phase 1 under the current development agreement. The applicant has also requested that the covenant be modified for consistency with the riparian areas regulation such that no structure is permitted within 15 meters of the streamside protection area identified in the environmental report. Currently, the covenant reads that no lot line shall be located within 30 meters of the wetland boundary. The intent of the buffers were originally to screen the Olympic View development from neighboring lands that were at the time large and undeveloped. The lot boundary setback referencing the central pond was incorporated to accommodate the golf course design. However, the neighborhood context overall site plans have changed, which has diminished the need for the buffers. Staff continue to work with the applicant to meet the development permit guidelines, obtain appropriate information, and use necessary tools to ensure the overall principles of sensitive site design are followed. The impacts of the proposed amendments are viewed as minor in the context of the neighborhood, and staff can support the proposed amendments in order to meet overall development permit objectives that the team is working towards, while allowing for a development program that is acceptable to the applicant. So I'll just conclude by saying that this is really the result of a lot of good work that's not quite complete with Olympic View to address Council's desire to have more sensitive site adaptive planning applied to Olympic View. That concludes my introduction. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments, questions from Council? Councillor Day.
Thank you. Just reviewing the plan, there is a small wetland pond that a covenant area has been set aside as part of it in relation to the 15-meter setback, and that represents, I believe it's lot 26 and 27, where there is some covenanted area that says non-disturbance. And then there on the legend is a different type of hatching that is a covenanted area with no build. And I'm just curious why on lot 26 and 27, I don't quite understand the difference between a covenanted area that is non-disturbed and a covenanted area that is not built upon.
Madam Chair, if I could just clarify which schedule.
I am looking at Appendix 2, Proposed Subdivision Plan, and I'm looking specifically at lots 26 and 27, which are approximately 924 square meters each, and they both the lot lines are well within. In fact, the lot lines are right to the very edge of the water line.
So Madam Chair, on lots 26 and 27, I see that there are representatives of the Olympic View development here. Feel free to jump in if you can add to my answer. But the covenant area in the rear of proposed lots 26 and 27 are a covenant area for non-disturbance. That would represent an area that shouldn't be altered to protect the riparian habitat that's in the back of those lots, as opposed to a no-build area that would be similar to a setback to a lot line.
So when it's covenanted for non-disturbance, they won't be building over top of it either?
That is correct.
Just got really tiny on me. Great. And my other last question is in regards to the roadway. I assume that the roadway is in line with Veterans Memorial Parkway that leads into the development, but there's kind of two roadways leading onto Latoria Road, and I'm just curious how the road network is working.
Madam Chair, the site plan before Council, it represents the latest proposal from the applicant, and where I suspect a development permit will fall in terms of the developable areas and access points. So I think it's relatively self-explanatory in terms of those two points of access and egress. I can speak to the fact that the intersection at Veterans Memorial Parkway is still subject to review and future design finalization. And I can't help but notice the civil engineer for Olympic View is here in case further details are required. So.
Did the engineer want to speak? Okay, yes.
Hi, I'm Jeff Somerville from WSP,
Hi.
and I can assist with any questions you may have.
So there's two entryways that I see on the plan here before us tonight, and I'm just not sure, is the one, I think it's Castlewood Road across from it, and the other across from Veterans Memorial Parkway, is that correct?
That's correct. The Castlewood, the entrance opposite Castlewood is the existing golf course access road, so that would be redeveloped to a municipal standard. It would also provide looping for fire access and utilities. But the main access would be opposite Veterans Memorial Parkway.
Okay. So I guess I was confused in looking at the map earlier. I thought that was Veterans Memorial Parkway where Castlewood is. What if your main entrance is a road that basically goes one block and then becomes another road? Is there a planned stop sign on your road that leads to Castlewood, or how do you plan to handle the traffic flowing through that neighborhood?
Through phase one, there would be a stop sign at the intersection of Castlewood and Latoria. The master plan is to extend Veterans Memorial Parkway, which we've now called Road A, further south. So that would then cross on to tie into Bazanton. And that would be the main access for the golf course and the majority of the development. So the Road C access opposite Castlewood is a secondary access.
So currently it stops more or less at the 15-meter boundary from the wetland. So do you plan to cross the wetland with your roadway?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else from council? Councillor Null?
Yeah, my big concern with this is the fact that the adjacent property owners were not identified, that they were going to be reducing the required tree buffers. I understand the reason for doing that, and probably a very good reason, but owners have not been notified. I think they should be. So I would like to propose that we continue discussion of this and then refer it to a public meeting where the owners, adjacent owners, have been notified, because it's affecting them directly.
Councillor Logan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to acknowledge the amount of work that the applicant has put into this plan. I think what it does excite me is some improvements to the intersection at VMP and Latoria, which is failing notoriously right now. And what it will do too is finally realize the internal road structure once Road A attaches to Bazanton, which I think will be a benefit to the rest of the neighborhood. So I'm pleased. I've been around and seen a few iterations of plans for Olympic View, so I'm happy that this is the next step, and staff is satisfied that it's meeting all our objectives. Then I'm satisfied as well. So I will be supporting this as well. Thank you.
Okay. So if
I'll move the staff recommendation, Madam Chair, if you want to.
Okay.
Second.
And everyone's clear that's option A. Councillor D?
Just a question, with the staff recommendation, that would mean there would be no notification given to the neighbors who are directly impacted by the reduction in setbacks. And I'd just like to know why we've had made quite an effort for citizen engagement, and we've made every effort to ensure that the community is aware when things are happening that will directly affect them. So how will notification happen after this motion?
Madam Chair, there is no notification beyond the process involved with this council meeting. 3 reasons went into the decision to forward this without undertaking a notification. Number 1, no legislative requirement exists to have public notification to alter a covenant of this type. Number 2, it was a decision that was already made by a previous council. Staff brought it back because the decision wasn't acted on and there was a change in council in the intervening years. And lastly, the applicant put forward a business requirement to have the decision made before mid-June. And so staff responded by bringing this as quickly as possible to council, which unfortunately didn't allow for a notification period.
So just to follow on that, you could see, if you read through the minutes from the previous council meeting in 2012, that there were a number of residents who attended the meeting who voiced concerns about the reduction to the buffer area at that time, specifically from Besanton Way and from Coleman Place, and also another person from Besanton Way. So I think that it's quite unfair that more effort isn't made to give notification to the residents who are directly affected. And I think it goes back on our integrity as a council, that we should be letting people know when things are happening in their neighborhood.
Okay, so we do have a motion on the floor, and it's been seconded. So call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, the motion is carried. So that goes on to item 6.1.2, report from the Director of Planning, consideration of draft official community plan, bylaw number 1700.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a bit of housekeeping with respect to the official community plan process. The Local Government Act requires that Council, in between first reading and public hearing, give consideration to all applicable financial plans and waste management plans that would apply to the municipality that's subject to the official community plan update. In Colwood's case, it's of course our financial plan, which, as you've probably noted as you approved it earlier this year, includes multiple projects and commensurate budgeting through to 2022 to reflect the projects that are proposed in the official community plan. And the financial plan was built around the expectation of the OCP being adopted this year. With respect to the waste management plans, they are the both CRD plans, the CRD solid waste plan and the core area liquid waste management plan. Staff went through both plans pretty carefully and found no reason to see a conflict between the official community plan and those waste management plans. And I think in our case, because the CRD provides those services and administers those plans, we can expect that there wouldn't be a direct connection between our OCP and those plans beyond the demand that development would place on them. So with that, I conclude my introduction. Thank you. And I should just mention that all staff is asking for is to simply receive this report. Thanks.
Thank you. Council, questions, comments? Council Martin?
Move receipt.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that is carried. Okay, on to 6.2, Finance and Administration. We have 6.2.1, a memorandum from the Corporate of Communications regarding the draft 2017 annual report.
Thank you. So presented for your review is the 2017 Colwood Annual Report. It reports on the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2017. So it is indeed a 2017 annual report. It's a collaboration by all city departments, so information is collected by all groups. There are some additions this year to the annual report. One is the statistical section at the end of the report. All that information is new this year and provided by Finance with some tables. So that's going to be very useful information going forward as we build it year to year for comparative data. That's all I have on the annual report.
Thank you. Council? Councillor Null?
Yes, the report states that at the time this report was written, no public input had been received regarding the report. Well, we just got quite an earful of public opinion, and what concerns me is the public assertion that parts of the Act are not met, the legal requirements are not met by this report. I was wondering if staff could assure us that they are, or whether we should refer this to another council meeting.
So my understanding is that it is a 2017 annual report, not a 2018 annual report, and the community charter states that it needs to be provided by June 30th of the current year.
Through the chair, I would just add some of the comments by the public, which I do appreciate. There is a schedule in the back which provides exemption information on page 76. With respect to providing a multi-year focus of the annual report, a valid concern, and what I would say to that is that many of the priorities identified in the annual report do span multiple years, including 2019. Perhaps the headings could demonstrate that more clearly, but there are multi-year priorities set out in this report, and they're consistent with the financial plan. Thank you.
Hold up. Okay. First of all, I love the report itself, so I want to actually offer kudos to the report. I think it looks fantastic from a visual standpoint, from a reading standpoint. I think it's a really excellent document that way. Saying all that, I am not as up to speed as resident Mr. Wright mentioned, and I do not feel as though I heard enough from staff to reassure that we are meeting all the legislative requirements of this report that Mr. Wright mentioned. I'm content with the report, but I also want to make sure that we are actually meeting all the legislative. So I actually need somebody from staff to actually say those words, that we are meeting the legislative requirements for this report.
In my opinion, it meets the legislative requirements for the report. I will add, however, there's no requirement on the Act for Council to approve or not approve. We've met the requirements to present it publicly, so there's really no harm if there can be some tweaks to be made to make it very clear that those requirements are made. I'm speaking particularly about identifying in the report that some of the priorities are for 2019 as well, and that can be an administrative exercise that can be easily accomplished.
Mm-hmm. If I may, though, I think the fundamental difference is the assertion that this is a 2018 annual report, which it is not. And so the requirement to look into 2019, while it will be valuable to update it, as you say, it's not a legislated requirement from my understanding, because it's not a 2018 report. It is a report of 2017.
Thank you. Did council have any other comments, questions? Councillor D?
Thank you. I think it's great when the public takes an interest in providing input, especially into our annual reports. It's a big document and a big piece of work for the city to get right. So I would really love to hear that staff would take the resident up on his offer to meet with staff and perhaps make some small adjustments to this year's report, but even more importantly, incorporate that feedback into creating next year's report. Because I think, legislated requirements aside, everything that we can do to make the report easier to understand and more meaningful is going to be a benefit to all of us. So I think it can be a win-win situation. We might have only got 2 out of, I think it was 7 CRIS points this year. 3 out of 7 CRIS points. But maybe next year we'll get 6 out of 7 CRIS points. And eventually 7 out of 7. So let's work together on that. And since we don't actually have to adopt it, we're receiving this report from staff. We can certainly look forward to making small adjustments that we can for this year and making notes for next year.
Okay, so we have a recommendation that the draft annual report for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2017 be approved and made available to the public. I guess, is it a problem for staff to have another meeting for public input?
Sorry,
or
another
a meeting?
Council meeting?
Sorry, not another council
meeting
meeting,
with the
but
member of the public.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. Is that good with everyone on council? Okay, so I do need the motion moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that is carried. Okay, so item 7, in camera, I believe we do have an item to be released. I'm wondering if the administrative assistant could give the wording for it. Are we here? Oh, sorry.
She wasn't there.
The motion that was approved by council in camera this evening was to direct staff to proceed with the hiring of a new director of corporate services to overlap with the pending retirement of our current director of corporate services.
Great, thank you. So that's the release of the in-camera resolutions, and then...
Wait, do we need to move on something?
I don't think so. Yeah. It's just, oh.
Sorry.